Good afternoon. My name is Jackie Job and I am a dancer and choreographer. Currently, I'm in a special place in my life where my job is not only doing what I love, but also the means by which I make sense of my worlds, our worlds. Basically, what this means is that my artistic and day-to-day lives are deeply intertwined. And the older I get, the more convinced I am of this necessity. I was born in an ambulance, just outside the hospital, and according to my mother, just before it turned into the hospital grounds. So in a matter of speaking, I was born on the road and in transit. This sense of being on my way to something or someplace, and then unpredictably, as if by a twist of fate, finding myself somewhere else, has informed how the dance of my life is constantly performed. Today, by way of a manifesto, I would like to use this analogy of birth as a metaphor for how we might rethink conventional beginnings in order to reimagine ourselves into evolving beyond what we think we are and know. I too am a mother, and I have birthed a beautiful daughter. Around the ages of 3 and 4, she told me where she came from. She claimed to have another mother up in the stars. One day, she said, they were looking at the world when she saw me, and she decided to choose me as her mother. Her other mother then placed her inside of me. Now, I have to admit that her narrative certainly shook my sense of self-importance. But it also inspired me to contemplate the idea of other beginnings in my dance. And through imagination, I began to rethink notions of the past. The philosopher Jacques Derrida suggested a reimagining of the Bible's narrative of the Garden of Eden. Now, this is a story that many Christians unquestionably consider to be the start of the world. Derrida, however, suggests imagining Eden at a time when humans and animals coexisted, the time before the expulsion of Adam and Eve. Considering that memory is not only mental, but also felt and cellular, I wondered if traces of that coexistence might have remained deep within my cells. What might it mean if those memories were reawakened? What might I become? Much like my daughter remembered a time when she was elsewhere, how could I, through my dance, remember, as in put the members of my physical body together again and reignite different memories? Of course, it is a valid consideration that my daughter's memory of her other mother happened before she entered the formal school system. See, educational systems are seldom designed to innovate alternative thinking that synergize beginnings with memories of the past and visions of the future. For me, that synergy is important because it interrupts hierarchical separations between differences. Needless to say, her retelling of this story decreased as she matured and learned to select which thoughts to articulate. But my daughter, she makes my heart feel so big, much bigger than my literal physical frame can hold. And I know that the best expression of my love is when I feel as if I'm offering more than what I imagine is held in this body. Remembering in dance, her remembering of being elsewhere before and with an other mother behooves me into accepting how elsewheres and others can contribute to and reconstitute my world. I, alone, am not enough. Activating modes of love that make me feel bigger than myself demand a relinquishing of my own self-importance and require efforts in getting to know my collaborators. To do so, I have to let go of what I think I should know. And thus, I imagine myself as animated by the interpenetration of multiple elements, which are tangible, intangible, material, physical, organic, spiritual, animal, and human. And truthfully, this sensibility has been liberating. Instead of holding myself to fixed states of being, this reimagining creates a capacity for and inclusion of difference, which then catalyzes growth, compels evolution, and effectively inspires movements beyond what we think we may know. All of us here today have some aspects of the University of Cape Town in common, correct? So I wonder if I could ask you to stretch your imagination and see the university as a kind of mother, a body through which different people can emerge. Naturally, each of these individuals coming through the university have former existences, and interestingly, the university system attempts to acknowledge those different beginnings through a program called RPL, which stands for Recognition of Prior Learning. This program is put in place in compliance of government policies of redress and transformation, which aim to create a more equitable society. Therefore, RPL has predominantly targeted those who have been disadvantaged in terms of their access to education. Now, as the racialized politics of our worlds deliberately obstruct the development of all people of color, in South Africa especially, RPL programs are undeniably essential. However, the white experience of access dominates our sensibilities of who, how, and when we arrive at levels of success. Thus, a deeply ingrained prejudice remains against RPL candidates, in the sense that their capacity might be seen to be of lesser value than their peers, whose lives might have followed more conventional paths. On the other hand, education enables job opportunities. So, at the very least, allowing RPL candidates access to institutions of higher learning enables people of color with historical contexts of non-access to enter the university and receive the paper that might afford their eligibility for employment. That is, unfortunately, to my mind, where the thinking seems to stop, from both the institution and its candidates. To be clear, I am not disputing the benefits of being employed. I am very grateful to be earning a regular income. However, limiting thinking to getting a job fails to imagine access as merely the start of an adventurous journey along multiple roads that will negotiate curves and climbs, have some stagnations, unexpected slips, and several slides. All these experiences, I believe, collectively mold and guide individuals to grow into and towards somewhere else, someplace unknown. For me, this kind of learning is especially satisfying when energized with a perpetual desire and will to modify strict monodimensional perspectives of identity. I entered the university's postgraduate system through RPL in 2012, and in a period of 10 years, achieved my honors, master's, and doctoral degrees. Each of these degrees delved into researching the modes in which I could resist being limited to fixed, singular descriptions of identity that are imposed without my volition. Through my dance processes and practice, I have learned to expand my worldview beyond the assumptions others may have of my identity. Interestingly, the very name recognition of prior learning holds a vital secret, and that is, claims to recognize, or pronounced differently, to recognize, meaning to become cognizant of again, or to think again. RPL thus implies rethinking the past to inform who learns. And I agree, we should include individuals with multiple kinds of pre-existences as being eligible for education. However, in rethinking our points of access, we need to appropriate irregular pasts into the learning journeys. Doing this with imagination produces worldviews that could override the norm and, in effect, set different values in place that, as a practice, will influence the ways in which we interact with others and otherness in life. I constantly strive to assimilate my dance and day-to-day lives beyond stereotypes. And for me, employing imagination in how I craft my choreographies does the work of seeking awareness of connecting with difference. For me, The work of reimagination is the repeated effort of seeing, activating, and embodying what is not yet. And doing this, as Harry Garuba so poetically says, prepossesses the future. There is an exercise that I like to do when establishing a connection with someone. I look into their eyes. And when looking deeply into the iris of another, I can see a reflection of myself. Thus, notions of you and I are inseparable. And what makes this inseparability even more complex is that the image of myself that is reflected in your eyes is small in comparison to the vastness that my actual eye sees. What does this teach me? That I may be small in the larger scheme of things, yet irrefutably implicated in how events within that larger scheme unfold. Using this exercise as a way to stretch the frames in which I identify, over time, I have learned how memories of coexistence might be made conscious and visible. To start, I am not only one thing. Therefore, no racialized, classist, or gendered construction of identity can enforce a limitation to my evolution. I have not arrived here through the conventions that you might believe to be necessary. My notion of success is not determined by the rules of society or stunted by my psychologically embedded behavioral patterns. Much like my birth, which occurred whilst moving from one place to another, living my life has been one that resists fixed beginnings or ends. Rather, I believe in experiencing ongoing transformations by negotiating awkward, difficult places in unexpected ways. And when I feel lost or overwhelmed, I stop and look into the eyes of an other. And then, quite unforced, I see myself inside and alongside manifold realities. If we could rethink our modes of beginning and expand that into realizing our ongoing potential, we would alter imposed sequences and trajectories of our lives, whether that be at the university, in the workplace, or at home. We would reimagine assumed compositions and configurations of ourselves and remain curious and alive to change. And then, by relinquishing our own sense of self-importance, we would have the capacity to evolve. Recently, I looked into the eyes of a horse called Beauty, and I saw myself. Beauty looked into my eyes, and she saw herself. Together, we found a connection, and there was love. I would like to share a few moments of my dance process and performance with Beauty. These moments have reinforced my belief that memories of animal-human coexistence can be felt and traced in ourselves and experienced through and in the body's viscera, senses, muscles, and limbs. In this dance called Ai, which is Japanese for love, I caught glimpses of elsewheres, pasts, and tomorrows, where synergizing difference is an unquestionable component of transforming the ways in which we live in communion with others and otherness with care. I hope you enjoy the short clip.